Health effects of coffee. Coffee lovers around the world who reach for their favorite morning brew probably aren't thinking about its health benefits or risks, and yet this beverage has been subject to a long history of debate. In 1991, coffee was included in the list of possible carcinogens by the World Health Organization. By 2016, it was exonerated as research found that the beverage was not associated with an increased risk of cancer. On the contrary, there was a decreased risk of a certain cancer among those who drink coffee regularly once smoking history was probably accounted for. Additional accumulating research suggests that when consumed in moderation, coffee can be considered a healthy beverage. Why then in 2018 did one US state pass legislation that coffee must bear a cancer warning label? A moderate amount of coffee is generally defined as 3 to 5 cups a day, or an average of 400 milligrams of caffeine, according to the dietary guidelines for Americans. Coffee and health. Coffee is an intricate mixture of more than 1,000 chemicals. The cup of coffee you order from a coffee shop is likely different from a coffee you brew at home. What defines a cup is a type of coffee bean used, how it is roasted, the amount of grind, and how it is brewed. Human response to coffee or caffeine can also vary substantially across individuals. Low to moderate doses of caffeine, 50 to 300 milligrams, may cause increased alertness, energy, and ability to concentrate, while higher doses may have negative effects such as anxiety, restlessness, insomnia, and increased heart rate. Still, the cumulative research on coffee point in the direction of the health benefits. Does the benefits stem from the caffeine or plant compounds in the coffee bean? Is there a certain amount of coffee needed a day to produce a health benefit? Cancer. Coffee may affect how cancer develops, ranging from the initiation of a cancer cell to its death. For example, coffee may stimulate the production of bile acid and speed digestion through the colon, which can lower the amount of carcinogen to which colon tissue is exposed. Various polyphenols in coffee have been shown to prevent cancer cell growth in animal studies. Coffee has also been associated with decreased estrogen levels, a hormone linked to several types of cancer. Caffeine itself may interfere with the growth and spread of cancer cells. Coffee also appears to lower inflammation, a risk factor for many cancers. The 2018 uproar in California due to the warning labels placed on coffee products stemmed from a chemical in the beverage called acrylamide, which is formed when the beans are roasted. Acrylamide is also found in some starch food that are processed with high heat, like French fries, cookies, crackers, and potato chips. It was classified in the National Toxicology Program 2014 report on carcinogen as reasonable anticipated to be a human carcinogen based on the studies in lab animals. However, there is not yet evidence of the health effect in humans from eating acrylamide in food. Regardless, in March 2018, a California judge ruled that all California coffee sellers must warn consumers about the potential cancer risk from drinking coffee because coffee selling companies failed to show that acrylamide did not pose a significant health risk. California law Proposition 65, or the Safe Drinking Water and Toxic Enforcement Act of 1986, fueled the ruling, which requires a warning label to be placed on any ingredient from the list of 900 confirmed or suspected carcinogens. However, many cancer experts disputed the ruling, stated that the metabolism for acrylamide differs considerably in animals and humans, and the high amount of acrylamide used in animal research is not compatible to the amount to present in food. They cited the beneficial health effect of coffee with improved antioxidant response and reduced inflammation, both factors important in career prevention. Evidence from the American Institute for Cancer Research concludes that drinking coffee may produce risk for endometrial and liver cancer, and based on this systematic review of a large body of research, it is not a risk for the cancer that were studied. In June 2018, the California Office of Environmental Health Hazard Assessment (OEHHA) proposed a new regulation exempting coffee from displaying cancer warning caffeine under Proposition 65. This proposal was based on the review of more than 1,000 studies published by the World Health Organization, International Agency for Research on Cancer, that found inadequate evidence that drinking coffee caused cancer. In January 2019, OEHHA completed its review and responded to comments and submitted a regulation to the Office of Administrative Law (OHL) for final review. Type 2 diabetes. Although ingestion of caffeine can increase blood sugar in the short term, long-term studies have shown that habitual coffee drinkers have a lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes compared to non-drinkers. The polyphenols and minerals such as magnesium in coffee may improve the effectiveness of insulin and glucose metabolism in the body. In a meta-analysis of 45,335 people with type 2 diabetes followed for up to 20 years, an association was found with increased cup of coffee and a low risk of developing diabetes. Compared with no coffee, the decreased risk ranged from 8% with 1 cup a day to 33% for 6 cups a day. Caffeinated coffee showed a slightly greater benefit than decaffeinated coffee. Another meta-analysis of a prospective cohort study showed similar association when compared the highest intake of coffee up to 10 cups a day with a lower of 1 or lower cup. There was a 30% decreased risk of type 2 diabetes in these drinking the highest amounts of coffee and caffeine, and the 20% decreased risk when drinking decaffeinated coffee. Further analysis showed that the incidence of diabetes decreased by 12% for every 2 extra cup of coffee a day and 14% for every 200 milligrams a day increase in caffeine intake up to 700 milligram a day. Heart health. Caffeine is a stimulant affecting the central nervous system that can cause different reaction in people. In sensitive individual, it can irritate the stomach, increase anxiety or a jittery feeling, and disturb sleep. Although many people appreciate the temporary energy boost after drinking an extra cup of coffee, high amount of coffee can cause an unwanted heart proliferation in some unfiltered coffee, such as French press and Turkish coffees. Contains deterpents, substance that can raise bad LDL cholesterol and triglycerides. Espresso coffee contains moderate amount of deterpents. Filtered coffee, drip brewed coffee, and instant coffee contain amount of no dependencies, as the filtering and processing of these coffee type removes the deterpents. Despite these factors, evidence suggests that drinking coffee regularly may lower the risk of heart disease and stroke. Among 83,076 women in the Nurses Health study, drinking 4 or more cups of coffee each day was associated with 20% lower risk of stroke compared with non-drinkers. Decaffeinated coffee also showed an association with 2 or more cups daily and 11% lower stroke risk. The author found no such association with other caffeinated drinks such as tea and soda. These coffee-specific results suggest that components in coffee other than caffeine may be protective. A large cohort of 37,514 women concluded that moderate coffee drinking of 2 to 3 cups a day was associated with 21% reduced risk of heart disease. In addition, a meta-analysis of 21 prospective studies of a man and a woman looking at coffee consumption and death with chronic disease found a link between moderate coffee consumption, 3 cups per day, and a 21% lower risk of cardiovascular disease death compared with non-drinkers. Another meta-analysis of 36 studies including men and women reviewed coffee consumption and a risk of cardiovascular disease including heart disease, stroke, heart failure, and death from these conditions. It found that when compared with the lowest intake of coffee, average of 0 cups, a moderate coffee intake of 3 to 5 cups a day was linked with a 15% lower risk of cardiovascular disease. Heavier coffee intake of 6 or more cups daily was neither associated with higher or lower risk of cardiovascular disease. Depression. Naturally occurring polyphenol is found caffeinated and decaffeinated coffee can act as antioxidant to reduce damaging oxidative stress and inflammation of cells. It may have neurological benefit in some people and act as an antidepressant. Caffeine may affect mental states such as increased alertness balance and attention, reduce anxiety, and improving mood. A moderate caffeine intake of less than 6 cups of coffee per day has been associated with a lower risk of depression and suicide. However, in a few cases of sensitive individuals, higher amount of coffee may increase anxiety, restlessness, and insomnia. Suddenly stopping coffee intake can cause headache, fatigue, anxiety, and low mood for a few days and may persist for up to a week. A prospective coherent study involving 263,923 participants from the National Institute of Health and American Association of Retired Persons found that those who drank 4 or more cups of coffee a day were almost 10% less likely to become depressed than those who drink none. In a meta-analysis of observational studies including 360,677 participants, the author found a 24% reduced risk of depression when compared to higher 4.5 cup a day at lower than less than a 1 cup intake of coffee. They found an 8% decreased risk of depression with each additional cup of coffee consumed. There are also a 28% reduced risk of depression comparing the highest to lowest intake of coffee, with the greatest benefit occurring with caffeine intakes between 68 and 509 milligrams a day, about 6 ounces to 2 cups of coffee. A review looking at 3 large prospective cohort of men and women in US found a decreasing risk of suicide with increasing coffee consumption. When compared with a no coffee drinker, the pooled risk of suicide was 45% lower among those who drank 2 to 3 cups daily and 53% lower among those who drank 4 or more cups daily. There are no association between decaffeinated coffee and suicide risk, suggesting that caffeine was the key factor rather than the plant compound in coffee. Neurodegenerative disease. Parkinson's disease (PD) is mainly caused by a low dopamine level. There is a consistent evidence from epidemiologic studies that higher consumption of caffeine is associated with lower risk of developing PD. The caffeine is coffee that has been found in animal and cell studies to protect cells in the brain that produce dopamine. A systematic review of 26 studies including coherent and cause control studies found a 25% lower risk of developing PD with the higher intake of caffeinated coffee. It also found a 24% decreased risk with every 300 milligram increase in coffee intake. A Finnish coherent study tracked coffee consumption and PD development in 6,710 men and women over 22 years. In that time, after adjusting for known risk of PD, those who drank at least 10 cups of coffee a day had a significantly lower risk of developing the disease than non-drinkers. A large cohort of men and women were followed for 10 and 16 years respectively to study the caffeine and coffee intake on PD. The results showed an assumption in men drinking the most caffeine, 6 or more cups of coffee daily, and 58% low risk of PD compared with men drinking no caffeine. Women showed the lowest risk when drinking moderate intake of 1 to 3 cups coffee daily. Alzheimer's disease in the CAIDE cardiovascular risk factor, aging, and dementia study drinking 3 to 5 cups of coffee a day at a midlife mean age 50 years was associated with significantly decreased risk of Alzheimer's disease. Later in life compared with low coffee drinkers after 21 years of follow-up. However, 3 systematic reviews were inconclusive about coffee effect on Alzheimer's disease due to a limited number of studies and a high variation in study types that produced mixed findings. Overall, the results suggested a trend towards a protective effect of caffeine against late life dementia and Alzheimer's disease, but no definitive statements would be made. The author stated that the need for large studies with longer follow-up periods, randomized controlled trials studying a protective effect of coffee or caffeine on a progressive of Alzheimer's disease and dementia are not yet available. Gallstones are various proposed action of caffeine and components in coffee that may prevent a formation of gallstone. The most common type of gallstone is made of cholesterol. Coffee may prevent cholesterol from forming with cholesterol in the gallbladder. It may stimulate constriction in the gallbladder and increase a flow of bile so that cholesterol does not collect. A study of 46,008 men tracked the development of gallstones and their coffee consumption for 10 years. After adjusting for other factors known to cause gallstones, the study concluded that men who consistently drank coffee were significantly less likely to develop gallstones compared to men who did not. A similar large study found the same result in women. Mortality. In a large cohort of more than 200,000 participants followed for up to 30 years, association was found between drinking moderate amount of coffee and low risk of early death compared with non-drinkers, those who drank 3 to 5 cups of coffee daily, were 15% less likely to die early from all causes, including cardiovascular diseases, suicide, and Parkinson's disease. Both caffeinated and decaffeinated coffee provided benefits. The author suggested that bioactive compounds in coffee may be responsible for interfering with disease development by reducing inflammation and insulin resistance. In a large prospective cohort of more than 500,000 people followed for 10 years, an association was found between drinking higher amounts of coffee and a low rates of death from all causes. Compared with non-drinkers, these drinking 6 to 7 cups daily had a 60% lower risk of early death. Protective association was also found in those who drank 8 or more cups daily. The protective effect was present regardless of genetic predisposition to either faster or slower caffeine metabolism. Instead, and decaffeinated coffee showed a similar health benefit. Conclusion. A large body of evidence suggests that consumption of caffeinated coffee does not increase the risk of cardiovascular disease and cancers. In fact, consumption of 3 to 5 standard 8-ounce cup of coffee daily has been consistently associated with reduced risk of several chronic diseases. However, some individuals may not tolerate higher amounts of caffeine due to symptoms of jitteriness, anxiety, and insomnia. Specifically, those who have difficulty controlling their blood pressure may want to moderate their coffee intake. Pregnant women are also advised to aim for less than 200 milligrams of coffee daily, an amount of 2 cups of coffee, because caffeine passes through a placenta into a fetus and has been associated with pregnancy loss and low birth weight. Because of the potential negative side effects some people experience when drinking caffeinated coffee, it is not necessary to start drinking if you have not already or increase the amount you currently drink, as there are many other dietary strategies to improve your health. Decaffeinated coffee is a good option if one is sensitive to caffeine, and according to the research summarized, it offers similar health benefits as caffeinated coffee. It's also important to keep in mind how you enjoy your brew. The extra calories, sugar, and saturated fat in a coffee house beverage loaded with whipped cream and flavor syrup might offset any health benefits found in basic black coffee.